Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. Today we're going to talk a little bit about time and our environments. Both of those things can affect our health and our wellness in ways that we might not tend to think of, and making adjustments to those can make improvements in our lives. We're going to talk about how to take time, how to make time, and then we're also going to talk about wellness and our environment and how we can make positive changes to support ourselves and give us the best shot we can at our own health and wellness. And part of that is also going to be going outside, which we'll talk about the benefits of towards the end. Now, personally, I feel like I am time starved a lot of the time. On the one hand, I existentially feel that. So I often say that there are not enough me's to live all the lives I would like to lead. I am so interested in so many different things, as I'm sure many of you are, that I feel that I'm not ever going to be able to experience or to learn all of the things that I would like to. And part of, the concept of time is understanding that that's okay. It's not something that we necessarily have to love, but we can learn to accept that. I don't know about y'all, but I am very bad about taking on a lot of new projects. I love learning new things, and sometimes I get a little bit carried away with myself, and I don't really think about how much time there is. I think instead about how much effort I am willing to expend on something. And my effort is mediated by my interest in it. So sometimes I will overwhelm myself and stress myself out by just not considering how much time I personally need to accomplish all of these tasks. And that can be very overwhelming and stressful. And when you're stressed, it's promoting the production of cortisol in your body in reaction to that. So then, your back is stiff and your neck is sore. And speaking of which, if you have not recently dropped your shoulders and relaxed your jaw, go ahead and do it right now. We're living in the moment. Now is as good a time as any for that. Now, that said, I know that many of us do not have enough time in our lives to perform all of the tasks required of us, let alone to perform the ones we desire, like self-care, volunteering, or even eating a healthier diet. It can be really hard to go to work all day, and then especially if you have kids or you have crazy amounts of traffic or both that you have to deal with when you get home or on the way home or taking the kids to practice and such, it can take up a lot of your time. And by the end of the day, you're just like, let's pick up a pizza or some other fast food instead of cooking. So we're going to talk about how we can make some more time and how we can influence our environment and our minds to perceive that we have more time to get things done. So first off, time is subjective. Stay with me. So science has established these units of time so that we kind of have something to measure against when we're going about our days. You kind of need that concept of time in order to make plans and have meaningful discussions with people about when you're going to have a meeting for work, or when you're going to take the kids to the park, when the kids have softball practice, all that jazz. But especially experiencing or perceiving time is a very subjective issue. So research, including that by Vos and Schmeichel, 2003, indicates that being mindful, or being in the moment, will elongate your perception of time. So, you don't have a lot of time, but we can technically make more of it. So how do we do that? Well, today we're going to talk about two main ways. The first of which is mindfulness, and the second of which is awe. So, with mindfulness, I'm sure most of you have heard of mindful meditation, but mindfulness in general is just meant to help you experience living in the moment, focusing on the little things so that we can appreciate everything in life, not just big events. We don't want to be living constantly in anticipation of the weekend when there are little things throughout the week that we can enjoy if we practice mindfulness along the way. So with mindfulness, the major way that people propose you develop it is through mindful meditation. So the way that works is you sit down for, starting out 2 to 10 minutes a day, whatever works best for you, and you try to focus on your breathing. And as you focus on your breathing, your attention is going to wander, and that is okay. Give yourself permission for that to happen without beating yourself up about it. Remember, we're starting a new things, and we are taking those little steps and allowing ourselves to suck at something new. And that's very important. So, you're going to get a lot further if you're positive about your progress rather than negative about what you have maybe messed up in your personal perception. So when you're sitting there meditating and your mind starts wandering, just recognize it that it's wandering, and then go ahead and return back to concentrating on your breathing. As you get more comfortable with that, you can expand your pursuit of mindfulness to focusing on other things, like any of your 5 senses, or focusing on your thoughts, specific thoughts in general, but not a type that you're just problem solving for. You're wanting to just kind of explore the thought instead. Now, when you do that, they say start with the breathing thing, but remember, we're all on our own fitness and wellness journeys, and there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all for everything. So if you're getting frustrated with focusing on your breathing and you feel like it would be more effective for you personally to start with, focusing on something that you can see, like a specific pattern, or focusing on something that you can hear, like you just want to sit outside and listen to the birds chirping in an otherwise quiet environment. Start with what works best for you. We're wanting to establish this as a habit, and in order to do that, you do want to experience some measure of success so that it will positively reinforce you to keep on going. Once you nail down what works best for you, then start tackling the ones that are a little bit harder until you get to the point where you are capable of being mindful in all types of situations and with all of your senses. Because that's really the goal, is to teach you to live mindfully in the moment and just accept thoughts for what they are rather than beating yourself up about things. So since that's the purpose of it, it doesn't matter which one you really start with. They just propose focusing on breathing because that tends to be the easiest for most people. But you are welcome to start with any of the others. You can also practice mindfulness anywhere that you find to be relatively quiet and peaceful. You can practice it in the little moments, or you can make a formal practice of it. A formal practice just means you're setting aside some time for it, whether that's in the morning before your coffee or after your coffee, or in the evening after your shower but before bed if you're a night shower. then that is going to help you the best. You need to help work it into your own routine, because if you're feeling that you're having to carve out time for it all the time, then that might be more difficult. If you only have 2 minutes to spend meditating, use those 2 minutes. That's okay. If you have an office, shut your office door, as part of your lunch break, let people know not to disturb you, and go ahead and meditate for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. It can help recenter you. That can be a lunch break routine that you have that'll help form it into a habit. You can also do it on the go. So you can just pay attention to your breath or any sensations, from any of those senses or the thoughts while washing dishes or eating or, walking a dog, doing, the grocery shopping, really. You can do that anytime. The DMV is a great place to practice mindfulness. Just while you're waiting, keep you calm. Airports. My ex would meditate a lot at airports and on planes. You're stuck there anyway. Go ahead and take advantage of that. Planes are relatively quiet most of the time, in my experience. You can also do it when you're starting a new activity. So when you're transitioning from working on something to starting an exercise routine, go ahead and just take a minute or two to focus on your breathing before you start going. You can do it anytime, anywhere. All right, we're going to go for a quick break, and when I come back, we are going to talk about awe and how that sensation or emotion can help you expand time.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
When to practice it, where, and how to practice it to help increase your focus on being in the moment. Now, if meditation isn't your bag, so if you're more like me and sitting still, focusing on your breathing for a while can be very difficult, or it just ends up making you sleepy, even if you are in a bright room, there are other more active ways to increase your mindfulness. One of the major ways is awe. So let's define awe. It's generally agreed upon and specifically voiced by Dr. Shyla Mirgan, the definition I'm going to read right now, as the goosebump type feeling we get when we come across something so strikingly vast in complexity, scope, or number that it alters the way we understand the world and allows us to see things differently. So that could be anything from seeing the Grand Canyon. I think a lot of people, when you think of something that's awe-inspiring in America, people tend to go towards the Grand Canyon. It's such a strange natural phenomenon that can be kind of awe-inspiring and beautiful to look at. Staring at the mountains after a really long hike and seeing a pod of dolphins, like just a whole bunch of dolphins, when you are at the beach or something, can really alter the way you see things. It inspires awe. There was a study by Rudd, Vos, and Aker in 2012 in the Journal of Psychological Science that addressed gratitude, behavioral changes, life satisfaction, and preference for experiences over material possessions. So they went ahead and had a bunch of people take these surveys blindly, and they told them that they were not related to each other in any way, the content in the surveys, that is. And these people went through and they scored things on a scale of 1 to 7 about, how stressed that they feel. And, do they think that time is boundless versus do they think that their time is finite? And afterwards, they took all these quizzes and they compared them to each other using some statistics and stuff. What they found was that awe can be elicited by reliving a memory, by reading a brief story, or even watching a commercial as short as 60 seconds in length. Whew, that would be a long commercial. So awe-eliciting experiences might offer an effective way for alleviating that feeling of being starved for time, like you just don't have enough of it. That, it affects so many of us in modern life. Now, they also found in a recent study from the University of Cal Berkeley that participants who experienced more awestruck moments had the lowest levels of interleukin-6, which is a marker of inflammation. So these awe experiences can give you both a sense of having more time as well as literally improving your physical health. That's a big deal, especially if you're prone to a lot of inflammation or if you have autoimmune diseases. Now, definitely I'm not saying to only seek awe as the solution to treating autoimmune diseases or anything like that. But, you can maybe lower your levels of interleukin-6 as well if you seek out these awe-inspiring moments. Now, with the study by Rudd, Vos, and Aker, they found that it led to some behavioral changes. They had these people watch some short videos or go ahead and write about an experience. And the control group was for happiness and the other group was for awe. So they tried not to use the words awe or happiness for most of these so that they didn't cause any conflicting variables in their data by, making people think of it because the word was said, rather than, just describing the experience and having people label it for themselves. So they would talk about, climbing the Eiffel Tower and looking at a beautiful landscape that was described versus climbing an unnamed tower and describing just a plain bare landscape. And seeing how people rated their experience of awe and happiness and how they were feeling at the time on 7 or 8 different emotions after taking that exercise of thinking about being in the shoes of the person who is having that experience. They found that it temporarily increases your life satisfaction. So the more awe people felt, the happier they tended to rate their personal life satisfaction. They also asked folks about how likely they were after experiencing these awe-eliciting events to donate money to charities or donate money to an individual, and also about whether they would be willing to donate their time in volunteering with a charity. And people did not have an increase in generosity of money, but they did in generosity of personal time. So people who experienced more awe in their lives were more likely to volunteer and help people out. So it tends towards acts of altruism, which is kind of fascinating. It also increased a preference for experiences over material possessions. So they had each set of people go ahead and experience something or write about something, relive it, that was awe-inspiring versus a happy memory. And then they would give them a list of questions. So they're like, would you prefer this versus that? And it would be like a jacket versus, tickets to Broadway. Or would you prefer a gift card to a restaurant versus a gift card to a movie? And go ahead and let people decide. And that most of the time, the people who had more awe were more likely to choose the experiences over the material possessions. Awe also can help give us a sense of hope and provide feelings of fulfillment or drive us to work towards a greater good and cultivate our compassion towards the self and others. It's something that literally will shift your perception. You can think about it as a driving force behind new discoveries or new technologies because it helps people's imagination and creativity really flourish when they have awe in their lives. So how do you get awe? A lot of us are really busy and we don't have a lot of time to create these awe-inspiring experiences, or we don't have the money to seek them out, or, the time off work. We can't afford to take the time off work. So how do we do that? You just cultivate awe in everyday life. Like they said, just reading a brief, happy story, like what they used to put in Reader's Digest a lot when I was a kid. I loved Reader's Digest and reading all the stories in there. Or reliving a memory for you that was awe-inspiring, like the birth of your first child, or any child really, that you're present for. Just something that was either really new and awe-inspiring, or something that just never gets old, never ceases to blow your mind. Think about that, like about how whales weigh tons and they can still propel themselves out of the water. That's so wild, and it's really cool. That is something that always inspires awe in me, and that's something I can sit there and think about for a while. Remember, even a 60-second commercial can help promote awe, so, watch those uplifting videos on the internet about super cute animals doing amazing things and like helping out other animals, especially when, they're of different species and one kind usually eats the other. I really like those where carnivorous animals will adopt orphan animals, like when a cat adopts a duck or something. I think that's fascinating, and it's so kind and compassionate that it elicits awe in me. There's no reason evolutionarily for the cat to be taking care of this duck. It's not eating it, and that would be the most evolutionarily adaptive thing for it to do. So it's a little bit unexplainable for me, and it's awe-inspiring. You can also try to look through the eyes of a child. So with children, everything is new for the first time. Everything is amazing and awe-inspiring. That is one of the reasons why I love talking to my nieces and nephews and godchildren a lot. They teach me so much about enjoying the little things in life and staying present in the moment, because children very much live in the moment. And that's why for them, time feels like it stretches on forever. So talk to the kids, get their ideas about things. Just ask a child an open-ended question, see where they go with it. Take a child to experience something for the first time. I took my godson once to a place like a manufacturing plant kind of, and you could take tours of it and see how things were made. He and I both love that TV show, How It's Made. We also like to watch Dirty Jobs. So I took him to another place that Mike Rowe had actually gone to on the TV show, and he got to experience that for himself. So taking them to experience things firsthand will help you kind of look at it through their eyes. You can even just ask them about it afterwards and be like, what did you learn, or what did you think was the coolest? And you'll get some surprising answers from them. You can also go through old photos of awe-inspiring trips or events. Go outside in nature. Going outside in nature are associated with 75% of awe-related experiences. Just be careful when you are living in the moment. You can do too much of a good thing. And living in the moment too much can result in a decrease in self-control. So just be mindful of that when you're being mindful, and you should be all set. All right, we're going to go on another quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about taking time.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
talking about making time and ways to do that through mindfulness and cultivating experiences of awe in everyday life. Up next, we're going to talk about taking time. So, as we discussed in the last segment, not everyone is able to take time off due to socioeconomic factors, and we can still experience awe in the little things, even if we can't truly take time. However, if you are able to take time, it's important that you do it. Now, why bother? You may think that you don't need a vacation, but you do. At my last job, I did not take any time off really up until this last year. I took one sick day in 6 years because I worked from home and was a manager. So I wasn't customer facing. I just spoke with my employees via, Google Hangouts and chat platforms and email, and similarly with my bosses. So anything that had to be said could generally be said via text. So even if I had a sore throat, I would still be there. Even if I had a stomach flu, I would still be there. Even when I got pneumonia and lost my voice, I still worked. I just communicated via messenger apps and email. If I had to do a Google Hangout with someone, then I would just go ahead and type to them while they spoke to me, just to go ahead and knock it out. You could call me a workaholic. You could totally call me workaholic. I work way too much. Even my hobbies tend to be work related. So, that said, I also didn't take my vacation time. I got like 2 weeks per year, and I would store it up for conferences because I was pursuing another career field at the time. So there were these 2 conferences per year that I would always go to, and they would take up a substantive amount of my time and my money, particularly if I was teaching a workshop or taking one, and that required me to be there longer in the week. But also a lot of times I would work from my hotel room while I was not at the conference. I once took 10 days to do a dig down at the border with a human rights group. And when I did that, I talked to my boss about it ahead of time, and he said I could just work the night shift for that week because my team was a mid-shift anyway, so I still would have 50% overlap. So I went out there and we got up at 5 a.m. and we would dig until about 5 p.m. And then I would go back and I would do my shift for work, get a couple hours of sleep, and go back to digging again. It was a lot. It was not great for my health, and I did get really stressed out and sick for a while. But also part of that was self-care for me because I loved doing that type of work. It was very fulfilling. And for me, that really offset the stress component. But I only stored up vacation for conferences, and I would just work from that a lot too. I did a bunch of performance reviews from a hotel room in Orlando once. I did work when I was a paralegal in the lobby of a conference hotel in New Orleans in between the conferences that I wanted to see. I was doing court filings in federal and local civil court. So I just did not take any time for fun, and the time that I did have did not roll over. So whatever you didn't use at the end of the year as management, you didn't get to keep. So it didn't matter. I worked the holidays because I'm like, I work at home. I don't have kids. My coworkers have kids. Let them enjoy the holidays with their family. I'll do Thanksgiving from my laptop in the living room while everybody else is in the kitchen or whatever. And I thought that was, really important. I'm like, yeah, I'm a hard worker. That's who I am. But really, companies don't care if you work yourself into the ground and never take a vacation. At least most companies don't. It was just taken for granted that if someone needed something and they needed a shift covered and stuff, that I would generally do it. So take that vacation and come back renewed and ready to crush it. Your boss will really appreciate that too, because if you're working at half capacity, then you're not going to be as productive. So you're doing yourself a favor even in your work life by taking a little break. I always encouraged my employees to take breaks, and I didn't listen to my own advice. I always told them proactively when we did their first intro meeting, hey, this job can be really stressful. If it starts stressing you out too much, come and let me know, and I will gladly give you a 3-day weekend. And it doesn't even have to be on the weekend. I'll just make sure that you have at least 3 days off in a row. You can use your vacation time however you want, but if you also just need the day off, even if you don't have the vacation time, I will give it to you because your mental health is important and you have to guard that. So when I finally did take my own advice and the advice of one of my coworkers and my boss and took a real vacation, I just hung out with my family. I went back to North Carolina and I picked the kids up from school each day and did homework with them and cooked and went for walks around my hometown, down by the river and stuff. I showed friends around the old historic cabins in our town via FaceTime. It was just really chill. And it may sound boring, but for me, that's what a vacation looks like. And that's what I personally needed. So when you do take time for yourself, do what works best for you. Since I worked all the time, I didn't want to go and do things. That's not the point. I was trying to take a break from doing all the things. So doing nothing and just hanging out with the family, hermiting, that's what I like to do. So make that work for you. Don't think about what other people think of as a vacation and what it should be. A vacation should be whatever helps you feel relaxed and taking a break from your overall stressful mindset, stressful life. Anything that is going to mediate that for you is a vacation. If you want to have a staycation and you just stay at home and do the things that you love and don't focus on work, that's fine. But also, staycations can be a little bit difficult because you still have things around your house that need to be cleaned and stuff like that. So, getting away can be really helpful even if you just go stay with a friend for a little bit. Have a sleepover with your friends. We used to do that all the time as kids, and it's such a nice pro-social activity where you just, get in your pajamas and you watch movies and, have a chill time. There's a lot of healing to be found in laughter, in my personal opinion, in my life. And sleepovers are great like that. Now, if sleepovers aren't your bag, that's cool too. But if they were when you were a kid and you're like, I kind of would like to do that. Or you watch Grey's Anatomy and you see Christina crawl into bed with Meredith and Derek and he's just like, we're having another sleepover. Okay. And if you think that looks fun, it is. Go for it. I have a pull-out mattress in my room and everything that I have for sleepovers. And I have tons of sleepovers with my friends. It's super fun and we can do girly stuff and, paint our nails, and we love to do face masks. Or if, one of our other friends comes over and they're more into video games, then we're going to play video games and, eat pizza. It's a treat. That's what a vacation is. Don't go overboard, but you can have a lot of fun and help you feel less stressed out. If you like being social with people that you like, then that's a good way to do it. I don't like going out and doing lots of big events and stuff. So for me, having sleepovers is really helpful because I get to be comfortable in my own environment and it's relaxing and we get to just chill. When I came back from that vacation where I just hung out with the family the whole time, I felt a lot better. I felt more grounded, less anxious, and overall, strangely more confident that the job I was in was what was causing a lot of my stress. Before that point, I didn't recognize the job as an issue. I thought it was other life factors, but I felt so much more relaxed being away from that for just a couple of weeks that it really changed my life. I gained a whole new perspective from it. I realized that was not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And in that way, it was kind of awe-inspiring. Awe-inspiring events help you gain perspective. They change your perspective. And something as simple as just hanging out with the kids and watching them learn and grow into their own personalities and being people, it was really cool to me, watching them experience things for the first time, teaching them how to do math that I take for granted at this point. It's amazing to watch that kind of thing, and it really helped change my perspective. So feeling like you don't have a lot of time is also linked to an increased risk of hypertension, headaches, stomach pain, sleep issues, mental health issues like anxiety and depression. It can cause a whole host of health issues in addition to general wellness problems. And then that in turn can result in a positive feedback cycle where you can't sleep because you feel that your available time is compressed or limited, you're time starved. And so then you don't get enough sleep because either you're worrying or thinking about all those things and the thoughts are keeping you awake at night, or it's just causing sleep problems in general. And then you're so tired that you're less effective at your job. And then you have to push things onto the agenda for the next day. And then you feel like you don't have a lot of time. And it perpetuates over and over. And we don't want that. Now, granted, it's like clearly nobody really wants that. But if you are able to take time off, take it, especially if it doesn't roll over. It is okay. The office will be fine when you get back. You have a phone. If it's really something that you're uncomfortable leaving for a little bit, just take half a day off. Start with the little things. Go ahead and plan ahead and then go ahead and take that time off. You need that time for you. The people around you need you to take that time for you. And so does your health. We're going to go on another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how we can address our environment to improve our wellness.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
In our last segment, we were talking about taking time. So why we should bother to do it, the benefits and the detriments of not taking it. So next we are going to talk about wellness in your environment. So our environments are something that we tend to take for granted. They're just there. We go to work, we go to school, we go home, and we just kind of exist there. It's the furniture in our lives, quite literally. And it can make a big impact on our daily experience of life. So it's important to be mindful of our surroundings. You're going to want to eliminate clutter. So the things that kind of stop us from spending a lot of time at home for our vacations, the distractions of, these are the things I have to do. These are the things I have to clean. If we work on those a little bit at a time, then it's going to help us in our wellness overall. Now, one of my previous roommates, who is one of my best friends, once told me something that pretty much changed my life, especially if you're living with other people. She is one of the most organized people I know. And Hayden said to me, make the lazy way the clean way. So you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. If you have a laundry hamper in the bedroom, but you always take your clothes off and just throw them in the bathroom floor, put the laundry hamper in the bathroom if there's room for it. If there's a linen closet in there, stick the hamper in the bottom of the linen closet and just throw your clothes in there. The hamper has to be somewhere. Why not the bathroom if you have the space for it? That way you're working with, your weaknesses. You're making your weaknesses into strengths in that way. I am pulling that laundry one from my own personal life. So, with roommates. It works. Just move the hamper and then everything will be in the hamper. You can also make trade-offs and compromises. So, my ex does not like doing the dishes that much. He's more of a laundry person, which is great news because I would rather do the dishes than the laundry most of the time, provided that the dishes are rinsed when we originally use them. So I told him, hey, I will do all of the dishes if you just rinse off the plates. And so that's just a rule in my house. And we have a sprayer on the sink, and you rinse off the plates. You can just leave it right in there and I will take care of it, whether it's something that has to be hand washed or something that can go into the dishwasher. As long as there's not food floating in water in my sink, I will take care of whatever it is. We have a garbage disposal, send it down the garbage disposal, and then I'm good to go. Also, work around other issues you may face. So I have eczema, as I spoke about before, vesicular eczema. So touching certain types of soaps, especially dish soaps because they're super drying, or anything that has like any acids in it, so citrus, or touching garlic, interestingly enough, will help those little vesicles react poorly. And then my hands are super dry and it's difficult and I hate it and it hurts sometimes. So I work around that by just wearing gloves. Whenever I do chores, I have a pair of gloves for pretty much every room, and that is what I use for cleaning. And that helps me. So that takes out one more piece of stress in my life to maximize my health and wellness and work around and with my own strengths and weaknesses. Another thing that I like to do, which I'm not great at yet, but that is okay, because remember, better choices, not perfect choices, is limiting screen time. So screen time can really impact our health, whether that's playing video games or watching TV or just being online or in front of a phone or a computer screen a lot. As I've mentioned before, most of my hobbies and my interests and my jobs have been in front of a computer. So you leave work like that meme and it's like, I want to leave the bad screen and go look at the good screen, because you're just going to go home and look at another screen. That can be very problematic, particularly if you are not also taking walks or playing outside and getting the physical activity you need to maintain your health and wellness. And we think of playing outside as being something for kids a lot of the time. But you can go out and throw a frisbee with some friends. You're still going to burn calories doing that. You're going to have fun doing it, ostensibly. If you have difficulty with it, get one of the frisbees that has the hole in the middle. Then you just stick your hand up through it. I like those a lot. You can play outside in so many different ways. I once played Plants vs. Zombies, the video game, outside with my 6-year-old cousin because he just wanted to pretend to be plants and zombies. And he made up all the rules and decided who won and who didn't. And we took turns being plants and being zombies. And it was very silly and kind of campy and way overacted. But that was part of the fun of it, because you can be weird and kids generally don't make fun of you for it. Kids tend to make fun of other kids, but not adults so much. So you can do weird voices and silly walks and stuff. And it can be a lot of fun. So you can still play outside. And just the act of standing there and walking around and doing these silly walks instead of sitting on the couch is going to be burning those calories. It's going to be helping you get more fit, because even though you aren't jogging or anything like that, you are still doing something more than you would have been. So even if it's 10 minutes of play sword fighting or, a Nerf battle or something, that's fine. It's still 10 minutes. It's pro-social if you are playing with other people. You could even just go outside and throw a rubber ball against the wall and catch that for a while. Just being outside, it's going to help you with getting that vitamin D3 if it's daytime, and it's going to help you with your mental health as well as your physical health. So there are actual negative health effects that you can get from spending too much time being sedentary in front of a screen. According to the Mayo Clinic, having a lot of screen time is linked to obesity, having sleep problems, behavioral problems, and they also said impaired social skills. Feel called out, but, it's okay. The Mayo Clinic just added me. They probably added a few of you too. But spending all that time in front of the screen can also affect your food choices. And you want to make sure that particularly kids don't have as much screen time. Now that said, sometimes you can't prevent your kids from having screen time. A lot of kids who have, serious illnesses in the hospital and stuff, it's difficult to keep them sitting still for, chemo treatments and stuff like some of the kids in my personal life. And that's totally legitimate. You have to work best with the circumstances that you have. Remember that. It's about making it work for you. But in general, the Department of Health recommends that you limit screen time for kids younger than 18 months. For 18 to 24 months, only high-quality media use with supervision. And limit screen time for kids age 2 to 5 to 1 hour per day. They also recommend keeping screens out of the bedroom. So I do not have a TV in my room. I do use my laptop in there, and I need to cut that out. But your bedroom should be for sleep and for sex, according to sleep experts. That's going to help keep you from being up all night. So plan how much television you're going to watch, including as a family, and try to prioritize some playtime, like unstructured playtime, particularly for kids. For adults, we can plan out whatever we're doing. If we're going to go axe throwing or something at or hatchet throwing that's a new craze that everybody's into. You can go do that. You can go bowling, etc. It doesn't matter. They also recommend, though, not using screen time as a reward. So I am guilty of that one. I would tell my godson, go play outside for an hour, and then you can come inside for an hour and have some screen time. Or if you go read your book right now for an hour or for 30 minutes, you will get the correlative amount of time in front of the screen, playing video games or watching TV and stuff. And he also didn't sleep good as a kid, just like me. So he would wake up in the middle of the night and come into the living room, and we would watch Scooby-Doo together and eat midnight sandwiches, is what we called them. So they were just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but at midnight. So that is something that I also propagated, and that was not great for his health or for mine. You can also create a technology-free zone. So a zone can be a certain place, like they can't come into the kitchen, or it can be a time. They can be in the kitchen, but not during the activity of mealtime. If you want to play music and stuff on your screen while you are cooking, that's one thing. But, just taking established time away from your screen can be very helpful. It doesn't have to be mealtime. I like to go hiking and stuff, and I don't like to be bothered. You can also ask my previous employees, hey, I'm not going to call you on your day off. Please don't call me on my day off unless it is a true emergency. But for true emergencies like you being bleeding or on fire, there's typically not anything I can do for that. And most other things can either be handled by the manager who is on call or when I get back in. So I would literally on my days off lose my phone in my couch. I once lost it in my couch for 3 days, and those were 3 very magical days. I honestly had a flip phone up until it went down a waterfall with me while I was tubing with friends over here in the river a couple years back. And if it had not been for it not coming back on, even after I put it in the rice bag, I would still have that flip phone. I really enjoyed having a flip phone because it kept me from being on my screen all the time. Because I know that I have limited self-control when it comes to that. And I will get my phone out now anytime somebody asks a question I don't know the answer to. Or if I hear a word I have never heard before, I'm like, oh, what's that definition? Those are my triggers for it. And then I will pop out the screen and go look for stuff, even if I am out at the time. So having that hiking time or spending time with friends where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have my phone out right now. I'm going to be fully present in the moment with my friends is really helpful for me. So that is something that addresses my environment and my time wherever I go. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how to make little changes in your home and the workplace to help you have better wellness.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about wellness and your environment. So how to make changes like, limiting screen time, whether that's your phone or television, for adults and for kids to improve your mental and physical wellness. Now we're going to talk a little bit about your environment. So home and the workplace. Now, when you go to work, and there aren't a lot of plants, for a lot of people, you think that it doesn't really matter. I'm one of those people where I'm like, I don't really care. It's just a plant. I don't care if I can, touch plants or see plants or anything, as long as I can see out a window. That was always my thing at work, was if I worked in the office, I would sit facing the window so that I had a sense of time passing. That was my major thing. I didn't really care about the plants that were out there. At least not consciously. I just wanted to be able to see the passage of time or changes in the weather and stuff like that as my day went on. But there have actually been some scientific studies about how nature affects your health. Some of those have been conducted by and reported on by Bill Frist. So he used to be a U.S. Senate Majority Leader, and he also is a heart and lung transplant surgeon. So he kind of knows quite a bit about American health. So this work that he reported on said that increasingly healthcare and public health professionals are recognizing that the social determinants of health, like where we're born, live, work, play, and age, have a far greater impact on our health outcomes than the healthcare delivery system when you view those social determinants of health collectively. So a lot of other studies have estimated that healthcare services and getting them accounts for just 10% of longevity for the average person, while social and environmental factors account for twice that at 20%. Your genetics are 30%, and your individual behaviors are 40%. So our surroundings, our environment, and how they influence our choices will form the foundation for a healthy lifestyle. So, in 2006, American scientists, they did a study on perceptual pleasure in the brain, and it told them that dynamic natural scenes like the Grand Canyon or the Appalachian Mountains can increase interactions of opioid receptors in your brain. So it's literally like kind of giving you a high to look at something in nature, and it makes it physically pleasurable, especially when you compare it to like looking at a blank wall or a concrete wall. Now, I love architecture. I do love cityscapes. So for me, I'm a little bit different, and I really enjoy looking at city skylines. Those are kind of awe-inspiring for me because it's like, whoa, we built this. And also, the pyramids are amazing. Those are awe-inspiring constructions that humans made, and that is super cool. That's why we have the wonders of the world. These are things that are awe-inspiring. But cityscapes, I think, are also awe-inspiring. Ones that have lasted for hundreds of years, as well as those that are relatively new. I like to see if they're made of glass, like entirely. I mean, of course, there's steel and concrete and stuff inside, but the ones in Houston and everything where there's a lot of just glass panels, I think that they're gorgeous. There's a building in Austin that looks kind of like an owl, and I think that that is also beautiful. So it's whatever is going to give you a sense of those increased opioid receptors. But for a lot of people, it's going to be, those natural scenes. Now, there is also a negative connotation of living in a high-stress environment, such as a street with a lot of traffic, and that can cause your brain to tell your body, your adrenal glands, to produce a lot of cortisol, that stress hormone. So that interferes with your learning. It hurts your memory. It can literally weaken your immune system and your bone density, and it can also increase weight gain. It can skyrocket your blood pressure, and it can increase your risk of heart disease. Now, we know that it also can impact your mental health, of course, and your resiliency. It disrupts brain development in children. It can instigate emotional problems. It can also cause problems with depression or attention and regulating your inhibitions, like impulse control. And it's a big public health issue, actually. We don't tend to think of mental health as being a public health issue because it's not necessarily communicable in the same ways that bacteria and viruses are. But think about how if you're driving on the interstate or, anywhere where there's a lot of traffic and someone aggressively cuts you off or, almost sideswipes you and it makes you want to hit your horn and stuff. That aggression is spreading similar to how you would think of as a virus or a bacterial infection spreading. So it can still spread socioculturally in addition to, the biological phenomena. Now that said, you can increase your overall wellness in your environment as it is by introducing natural elements. So a study done a few years back showed that in the workplace, employees will demonstrate a 15% increase in reported well-being, so self-reported well-being, when they had natural elements around, like greenery and sunlight. That's one reason why at my old job as a manager, I would have a baseball and couple baseball gloves, and when I would do performance reviews, I would take them outside and do what I call dad coaching, where, you don't quite have to pay a lot of eye contact to each other, but we're getting vitamin D3, which was really important at the time because we were working in a call center environment, so we were not getting a lot of sun. And we would get playing ball, and so we were being active as well and just getting them out to improve their mood and their overall day, because that is important. Everyone's mental health is important. You can also decrease employee absences by having windows and trees or landscapes. So if you can't install a window, you can bring a plant in from outside if your workplace allows that. A study at the University of Oregon found that nearly 10% of employee absences could be attributed directly to architecture that didn't have any connection with nature, like no windows or views of trees and landscapes. So the last time I was at the local hospital, I thought it was really weird that they had a water feature inside of the building. I was like, why are they doing this? This seems like a waste of money. Now I understand that it is actually good for employee productivity, reducing absenteeism, and just their general overall health and well-being. Even if we don't necessarily understand it consciously, these psychological studies suggest that having more windows and natural light is going to be really helpful for them. And by them, I also mean you. There was also a longitudinal study that was performed in Southern California, and they tracked more than 3,000 kids living there over 8 years. And they found that the ones who live closer to parks, or like a rec department or YMCA where they could play basketball or swim, just generally being active, those kids had lower body mass indexes by the time they reached age 18 than the other kids who lived further away from parks and recreation resources. And they eventually estimated that if all of the children had matching access, nearly 10% of them would have lowered their BMIs from overweight to normal, and 2% would have moved down from obese to overweight. Now, as a city planner or a mayor, it's really hard to enact policies that are going to guarantee the health of your citizens. But if you offer sources of recreation like these parks or rec departments, then it's going to give people a better chance. They're going to go and seek these out themselves. It's just like how when a lot of people are buying houses, they look to see if there's a park nearby, if they have kids, and they want to be close to great schools. It does actually matter in the long run. So it even begins when you're just choosing the location of your home. If you are privileged enough to be able to choose something based on those criteria. Within your home, it's important to reduce clutter, even if you feel that it doesn't bother you. Increased clutter has been associated with depression and anxiety, and you should just go through and reduce it the best way that you know how. If you just haven't put some books away, I'm atting myself right now as I look at this giant pile of books on my desk that I am not reading. One of them is like an AP chemistry book because I was curious about learning chemistry. So I got it out one day and then I didn't put it back. I also am working on going outside more, but in the meantime, I could also bring outside indoors in the form of maybe a nice plant. Now, I do tend to kill plants though. I'm like a plant necromancer. Like once they're at the brink of death, I can bring them back. But since they can't tell me when they're hungry or thirsty, I have trouble with that, especially with orchids. I swear I follow the instructions on the label. I still kill them. So, do what works best for you. If you have a green thumb, bring some of that indoors. Put them on top of the windowsill or something. In your workplace, if you're allowed to take those in there, go ahead. If you're allowed personal items, feature those in there as well. Even at my old job, when they recommended we didn't bring a lot of personal items in because someone at the time was stealing stuff, I would bring mine in and take it home with me every day. I already had to bring in my laptop and my work equipment, so I would just put my little Funko Pops and stuff inside of my bag and take them to work with me. Eventually, they figured out who was stealing stuff, and I just left my stuff on my desk, and it was fine. And it did help me feel better. I also had my employees personalize their cubicles. They had these like plastic or plexiglass cubicles that worked really well with dry erase markers. They could erase them off of there if once they got stuff on there. So it was fine. It wasn't messing anything up. And it just brightened up the whole area. So we did that, and they were able to draw on them and just make beautiful works of art or take notes. Just however they felt like personalizing their space, and that was fine. And they loved it. I had some on mine. was like conjugating verbs and stuff for Brazilian Portuguese when I first started learning that, and that helped me out a lot. But then I would also draw pictures. So, hang up artwork that you or your kids made in there. Decorate the walls in your home. That's going to be a big one. Decorate the walls in your office if you're allowed. And if you aren't sure if you're allowed, go ahead and ask. Most of the time, people are not going to care unless you are having to work in a sterile environment, making microchips and stuff, or if, it's really dangerous, like in a factory, to have a lot of things that could be seen as clutter or fire hazards. So go ahead and ask and see if you can take something like that in there. Making these small adjustments by decluttering and decorating, even if you're not a decorative person. I'm not. My house looks like I live in a bachelor pad. I just don't see the point for curtains when I have blinds and such. But even adding some curtains and some art on the walls can make a big difference. Science supports it, so I encourage you to go for it. All right, we're going to go another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the science of going outside.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about wellness in your environment, how you can adjust the workplace and the home in order to promote better well-being overall and better health. Right now, we're going to talk about going outside. So, I'm not a big fan of outside, you guys. Well, that's not entirely true. I am when it's not too cold out. I do not like being cold. I would always rather be too hot than too cold. Well, I say that without having been in any extreme desert situations. That's fresh on my mind from watching Tremors this week. But that aside, I like going outside for hikes, but I like my hikes to actually be hikes. They need to have a view or they need to be strenuous for me to really enjoy them. I don't particularly enjoy going for strolls. And a lot of flat places that I've lived, my friends will be like, hey, you want to go hiking? I'm like, sure, where are we going? And they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to go to this park around the corner. I'm like, you guys, it is flat here. That's not a hike. You're asking me if I just want to wander around for a little bit. So for me, I like for hikes to have purpose. So I'm either going for exercise or to be surrounded by a lot of really nice trees or a nice mountain hike. I'm a mountain girl. But I'm also just I'm staunchly pragmatic. So I like for my exercise to serve double purposes, and I also like for my leisure to frequently serve dual purposes. I'm working on that because as we're going over here, not taking the time to truly enjoy things and making everything job related isn't great for your health and your wellness. So going outside though, I'm inside a lot because I'm working on my volunteer work and on podcasting and, all the other interests and stuff that I have. I'm learning new things online, but I could, go for a walk and take my podcasts with me. Not the ones I'm recording right now, of course, but the ones that I'm listening to. So I could go ahead and listen to that. There's an app for almost everything now. So if I'm learning something new on Coursera or edX, then I can start listening to those as I'm going out and enjoying my day. If your classes online have video components, go listen to them outside. I had a professor in college who taught our biology class, and he was one of my favorite professors ever. He really had a great understanding of the human body, including the human mind. So he would let us out of class every 45 minutes for 10 to 15 minutes because your brain needs a break about every 45 minutes. So he'd be like, hey, go do whatever you want to do. Go to the bathroom. Go get something to eat. I don't care. Just go outside is what this break is for. Just giving your brain a break. And he also taught us mitosis and meiosis through pairing us up outside. So he's like, okay, these are your sister chromatids. This is your homologous chromosomes. And he would walk us through metaphase, anaphase, telophase, all that jazz until we understood it and could do it on our own like a dance. Now he could have done that inside the classroom, but as a biologist, he also understood the importance of getting that vitamin D3. So he's like, hey, if we can do this outside, let's go do this outside. We don't need a projector screen for this lesson, and we don't need a board for it. You're going to learn it just as well in this other method. And it also addressed our learning styles. So in that way, it was very holistic of him, and that helped inform my own teaching approach for when I do teach. Now, that said, your surroundings can matter, like we mentioned earlier, for offices, but also even for healing in a hospital room. They did a study several years back where the researchers found that patients who had a view of nature from their hospital bed, instead of just having curtains or a blank wall, typically experienced hospital stays that were 8.5% shorter than their fellows. And that meant that they also had improved outcomes and reduced healthcare costs. There was a report as well in the economics of biophilia, and they estimated that if you applied that to the 4.8 day average hospital stay that it takes to recover from any major surgery, then it would reduce stays by half of a day per patient and amount to about $93 million in savings per year. That is a ton of money just by introducing a window that has a view of nature. So we might pave paradise and put up a parking lot and then we replant trees. And that's ironic, but planting those trees is important. Is that small amount of trees going to really cause an offset for how much pollution and such is going on in the city? No, but it's important for our well-being, even if we don't recognize it. Those trees are not just there so that your dog has a place to go to the bathroom when you live in the city. They can also use it for that, but the trees are there for your brain. And integrating nature views in an office space can save companies over $2,000 per year per employee in office costs. These are all based on scientific research, and you can really save money as a business by investing in the physical and emotional health and wellness, your mental health of your employees. And it's going to also promote healing. It boosts productivity. It can improve test scores for kids. And it also weirdly gives retail outlets higher sales. I don't know why that one particularly does. Seeing trees, I don't feel like it inspires me to purchase more, but that's what the studies have said. It's very interesting. And that journal of biophilia, the term means that it's your connection to nature, the human connection to nature and the love of nature. And the scientific community has recognized that for a long time. And it's science at this point. You know, if you told me that 10 years ago when I was 20, I'd have been like, go away. I don't want to go outside. I'm working on school and I have 3 jobs and I just don't have time for that right now. Who cares about trees? There's no way that it's actually going to make me feel that much better. But it's true. Improving your community well-being through increasing biophilic pursuits, like giving that access to your employees or just for yourself to natural views, plants, daylight. Open a window instead of just turning on the overhead light. Open up your blinds and the window, then you're going to get air and you're going to get some nice natural light. But it's also going to improve productivity. And today's productivity costs are 112 times greater than energy costs in the workplace. So by incorporating nature into your environment, it's not just a luxury for you, or if you own a business, for your employees. It can also be a sound economic investment in your own health and productivity. And that's based on neuroscience and physiological science. Science says go outside and experience nature, even if it is just 10 minutes. If you are meditating for 5 minutes, or if you are looking to cultivate some awe, you can do that with these small experiences and going outside. Remember that health and wellness are holistic and that 75% of all related experiences are reported as happening in nature. So you being out in nature, you're going to get some vitamin D. It's going to help you be more relaxed. Experiencing the awe of being mindful in those small moments is going to decrease the amount of interleukin-6 and thereby inflammation in your body. If you go outside and get some sun, just a little bit, then all you can do is win. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, and writing a nice review always really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'd appreciate it and love to hear from you. Thank you kindly. Have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.